In the heart of a small, forgotten town, there stood an old Victorian mansion that cast a looming shadow over the decaying neighborhood. The paint on its once elegant exterior had faded, and the windows were cracked, giving it an air of desolation. Few dared to venture near it, and even fewer dared to live within its ominous walls. However, desperate times called for desperate measures, and when James Thornton found himself in dire need of affordable housing, he reluctantly signed the lease to become the mansion's newest tenant. From the moment he stepped inside, an unsettling feeling settled in the pit of James's stomach. The air in the mansion was thick with an otherworldly chill, and the creaking floorboards seemed to echo with the whispers of long-forgotten secrets. The landlord, a mysterious figure named Mr. Blackwood, brushed off James's inquiries about the mansion's history with a cryptic smile. James moved into the only available apartment in the mansion, located in the basement. The narrow hallway leading to his unit was dimly lit, and the flickering bulbs added an eerie ambience. As he descended the staircase, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and the air seemed to grow heavier with each step. The basement apartment was surprisingly spacious, but no amount of furniture could dispel the constant feeling of unease that lingered in the air. Strange noises echoed through the dark corridors at night, whispers that James couldn't quite make out, and the distant sound of shuffling footsteps. As days turned into weeks, James began to notice peculiar occurrences. Objects would go missing, only to reappear in odd places. Shadows danced along the walls, taking on unnatural shape. He dismissed these happenings as mere tricks of the mind, until he woke up one night to find the figure of a woman standing at the foot of his bed. The ghostly apparition wore a tattered gown, and her eyes glowed with an ethereal light. Her presence exuded a deep sorrow that sent shivers down James's spine. He tried to scream, but his voice caught in his throat as the ghostly figure approached, reaching out with spectral fingers that felt like icy tendrils. In the following nights, the encounters with the ghost became more frequent and intense. James learned that the spirit was that of Eleanor Blackwood, the daughter of the mansion's original owner, who had tragically died under mysterious circumstances in the basement many years ago. It seemed her spirit was trapped, unable to find peace. As James delved into the mansion's history, he discovered a dark tale of betrayal, forbidden love, and a family torn apart by secrets. The basement, once a place of joy and laughter, had become a cursed chamber where the spirits of the past sought. Driven by an inexplicable force, James became determined to free Eleanor's spirit. He sought the help of a local medium who specialized in paranormal investigations. Together, they conducted a séance in the basement, hoping to communicate with the tormented. The room grew colder as the medium channeled Eleanor's presence. A haunting voice filled the air, recounting the tragic events that had unfolded within those very walls. Suddenly, a violent gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging them into dark. In the blackness, James felt a cold hand on his shoulder, and a whisper echoed in his ear, a plea for release. The medium struggled to regain control of the séance, but an otherworldly force seemed determined to prevent Eleanor's spirit. As the séance reached its climax, the room shook with a malevolent energy. A deafening scream pierced the air, and James felt an unseen force tightening around his throat. The medium frantically chanted an incantation, desperately trying to break the ghostly. In an instant, the room fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and James gasped for breath. The medium, exhausted and drained, declared that Eleanor's spirit had finally found peace. The basement, once a chamber of sorrow, now felt strangely calm. The following morning, James awoke to find the mansion transformed. The air was no longer thick with malevolence, and the oppressive shadows had lifted. The once forgotten town began to recover, and the old Victorian mansion, though still standing as a relic of the past, no longer harbored the dark secrets that had plagued it for decades. As for James, he moved on from the haunted dwelling, forever haunted by the memories of the ghostly encounters in the basement. The town's residents whispered tales of the brave tenant who had faced the malevolent spirit and brought an end to the centuries-old. The mansion, however, remained a silent witness to the horrors of its past, standing as a chilling reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. In the heart of a desolate countryside, surrounded by gnarled trees and overgrown shrubbery, stood an imposing manor. Its crumbling facade loomed over the landscape like a specter from another time, its windows dark and foreboding. Nestled within its decaying walls lived Henry Blackwood, a man haunted by his own demons and drawn to the darkness that permeated the air. Henry was a solitary figure, his past shrouded in mystery, his present a shadowed existence spent in the company of ghosts and whispers. From the moment he set foot inside Thornwood Manor, Henry felt the weight of its history bearing down upon him. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, the echoes of long-forgotten laughter echoing through the halls. But it was the basement that held the darkest secrets, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred into nothingness. Henry rarely ventured into the depths below, the chill of the air sending shivers down his back. Yet on moonless nights when the wind howled like a banshee and the shadows danced in the flickering candlelight, he would hear faint whispers rising from the bowels of the house, beckoning him to explore the unknown. One such night, as the darkness swallowed the land and the stars were veiled by thick clouds, Henry descended into the abyss. The stairs groaned beneath his weight, the air thick with the scent of ancient earth. His flashlight cast feeble beams into the darkness, revealing rows of dusty shelves and forgotten relics of the past. As he wandered deeper into the labyrinthine depths, Henry felt a sense of unease gnawing at his senses. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, twisting and writhing like specters from beyond the grave. He brushed it off as mere imagination, the product of a weary mind seeking refuge from the terrors of the night. But then he heard it, the sound of whispers echoing in the darkness, faint yet unmistakable. Henry's heart quickened, his pulse pounding in his ears as he strained to pierce the veil of shadows. He called out into the abyss, his voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. And then he saw them, figures shrouded in darkness, their forms twisted and contorted by the depths of despair. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their footsteps echoing like a funeral dirge in the stillness of the night. Henry's breath caught in his throat, his mind reeling with disbelief. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice trembling with fear. The figures said nothing, their eyes empty sockets that seemed to pierce the darkness. They beckoned to him, their hands outstretched in silent invitation. Henry hesitated, his instincts warring with his curiosity. But the pull of the unknown was too strong to resist. With trembling steps, he approached the figures, his heart pounding in his chest. As he drew closer, he could see the faint outline of their features, faces twisted in agony, eyes hollow and... "Come," they whispered, their voices a chorus of despair. Henry followed them deeper into the darkness. "You have entered the realm of the forgotten," it whispered, its voice echoing through the void. The figure regarded him with eyes as old as time itself, its gaze piercing the depths of his soul. "You seek answers," it replied, its voice a haunting melody that hung in the air like a lament. "But answers come with a price." Henry felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of its words sinking into his bones. He had ventured into the abyss in search of truth, but now he realized the folly of his quest. For in this realm of shadows and whispers, the line between knowledge and madness blurred beyond recognition. And yet, despite the overwhelming sense of dread that threatened to consume him, Henry could not turn back. He had glimpsed the face of the unknown, and now he hungered for its secrets like a moth drawn to the flame. "There are truths that mortal minds cannot comprehend," it said, its voice a lament for all that was lost. "To seek them is to invite madness into your soul." But still Henry pressed on, his thirst for knowledge consuming him like a fever. He had come too far to turn back now, his fate bound to the whims of the abyss. And so the figure spoke of worlds beyond worlds, of realms that existed beyond the limits of human understanding. It spoke of ancient beings that slumbered in the depths of time, their dreams shaping the very fabric of reality. But with each revelation came a price, a toll paid in blood and madness, a truth that called out to him with a siren's. And so, with a heavy heart and a mind consumed by madness, Henry made his choice. He would embrace the darkness that lurked within, heedless of the consequences that awaited him in the depths below. For in the end, the abyss always claims its own, and Henry had become one with the shadows that danced in the eternal night. As the whispers faded into silence and the darkness enveloped him, he knew that he would wander the halls of Thornwood Manor for eternity, a ghost among ghosts, haunted by the echoes of his own demise. In the heart of a forgotten town, nestled among the gnarled branches of ancient trees, stood a house steeped in shadow and whispered tales. Its weathered facade bore the scars of time. Windows like empty sockets staring out into the local spoke of its haunted basement in hushed tones, warning of restless spirits that prowled the depths, hungering for the souls of the living. Despite the warnings, the allure of the unknown drew the curious like moths to a flame, their fates entwined with the darkness that lay within. Among those drawn to the house was Eliza, a young woman with an insatiable thirst for adventure. She had always been fascinated by the supernatural, captivated by stories of ghosts and spirits that haunted the living world. For Eliza, the whispers of the townsfolk only fueled her curiosity, igniting a desire to uncover the truth that lay hidden within the house's walls. On a cold autumn evening, as the moon hung low in the sky, Eliza stood before the looming house, her heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, a foreboding presence that seemed to cling to her skin like a shroud. With a flashlight clenched tightly in her hand, she pushed open the creaking door and stepped into the darkness beyond. The interior of the house was a maze of twisting corridors and crumbling rooms, each shadowed by the weight of its own history. Eliza's footsteps echoed hollowly against the floorboards as she ventured deeper into the labyrinth, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon in the night. The air grew colder with each step she took, sending shivers racing down. As she descended into the depths of the house, Eliza felt a sense of unease settle over her like a heavy fog. The walls seemed to close in around her, their shadows dancing in the flickering light of her flashlight, but she refused to be deterred. She had come too far to turn back now. It was then that she heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the sound of her own heartbeat. Eliza froze, her breath catching in her throat as she strained to listen. The whisper seemed to emanate from the darkness itself, a sibilant voice that sent chills racing down her spine. Trembling, Eliza pressed on, following the sound of the whisper as it led her deeper into the bowels of the house. The corridors seemed to twist and turn in on themselves, disorienting her senses as she stumbled blindly forward. But still, she pressed on, driven by an insatiable curiosity that refused to be sated. As she rounded a corner, her flashlight flickered and died, leaving her engulfed in darkness. Panic seized her heart as she fumbled for the switch, her fingers trembling with fear. But when she finally managed to coax the light back to life, she found herself face to face with a sight that would haunt her nightmares for years to come. Before her stood a figure, shrouded in darkness, its form shifting and swirling like smoke in the wind. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, fixated on Eliza with an intensity that sent her pulse racing. She tried to scream, to flee from the nightmare unfolding before her, but her voice was lost in the suffocating darkness. The figure advanced, its movements fluid and graceful, like a predator stalking its prey. Eliza stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest as she struggled to escape its grasp. But the darkness seemed to constrict around her, trapping her in its icy embrace. And then, with a suddenness that stole the breath from her lung, the figure lunged forward, its fingers wrapping around her throat like a vice. Eliza gasped for air, her vision swimming with stars as she fought desperately against the darkness that threatened to consume her. But it was no use. The figure was relentless, its grip unyielding as it dragged her deeper into the abyss. And as the world faded to black around her, Eliza knew that she had stumbled into a nightmare from which she would never awaken. For in the depths of that haunted basement, the echoes of the past whispered through the darkness, a reminder of the souls that had been lost to its depths. And as Eliza's life slipped away, she joined them, another victim of the house that hungered for And so, the legend of the haunted basement lived on, a cautionary tale for those who dared to tread where darkness dwelled. But for Eliza, there would be no happy ending, no redemption for her sins, for in the end, she had been consumed by the very darkness she had sought to uncover, a victim of her own curiosity in a world where nightmares lurked around every corner.